What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night, 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
No, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go! Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You are watching 40 Days, 40 Nights. This long odyssey where your boy EJ Stewart will be doing not one, but 2 live streams per day, talking sports, talking all fun things, pop culture. We got an early show for you. I know I'm up a little early. Obviously, it's 5:06. Typically, we start a little after 6 o'clock. I'm really excited about what I have going for me later tonight. I hope you guys join me. I'll be with my guys, Dexter Henry and Brian Fonseca. They are the hosts of the Knicks watch party that they do for the New York Got Game podcast with the New York Post. I know Dex has obviously been at the New York Post for a long time, and he's been doing an awesome job there. All the video content that he's been doing as their host and reporter and all things New York Post for when it comes to sports digital content. He's been amazing, and his content's been awesome, and he's been obviously a friend of mine, and he's been a friend of some of the work that I've been a part of. He's, of course, you've heard him on updates on WFAN, where I've also been on the air hosting on WFAN. You've also heard him doing updates on Infinity Sports Network, and he was truly one of our better fill-ins for the Maggie and Perloff show on Infinity Sports Network. And it was always great when Dex was on, and it's been great that someone that I admired from a distance I've been able to become good friends with, and really is an honor that I get to join him and Brian later today watching Knicks at Raptors. That game kicks off at 7:30. I'm not sure exactly what time the live stream starts because I'm not obviously running it. I run this live stream. I know exactly when it starts. I'm not in the boss when it comes to what's going on in the New York Post, but game starts at 7:30. I'm sure we'll be live. I'll be there by 7 o'clock. So I'm sure we'll be live for some kind of pregame around 7:30. New York Post Sports, their YouTube channel, I think is where you'll find this live. So be sure to check me out. I'll be with them watching Knicks at Raptors. And we're going to get to some big Knicks stuff because there's a lot of big rumors regarding Giannis Antetokoumpo. We'll also talk about some coaching news. We got a new coach in Cleveland. The Jets finally found a defensive coordinator. So we got a lot to get to, and I'm going to try to condense this as much as possible and make sure you guys get a great show and I get as much in before I got to run out of here. But again, this is 40 Days, 40 Nights. Your boy EJ Stewart. Again, if you're enjoying this show, we're streaming live currently on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. Make sure you also follow me on X where we're streaming live, EJ_Stewart, and on Instagram, Action EJ. So let's get right to it because I got a phenomenal guest coming up at 5:15. My guy, Tommy Beer. That's right, NBA writer. He is, of course, my former co-host of the Orange and Blue Bloods podcast that we did, the Knicks podcast for WFAN and Odyssey. He will be joining me at 5:15 to talk about this Giannis Antetokoumpo sweepstakes that is now underway. I think that is fair to say at this point, given the reporting we had today, it is underway. So this all came down from Shams Charania that the Bucks are now listening to offers to potentially trade Giannis Antetokoumpo either this offseason or, and this is probably a little more urgent, some point before the trade deadline. Giannis Antetokoumpo has also made it clear that he is ready for a new opportunity, ready for a new location, and this is, I guess, has kind of become a mutual parting of ways that will eventually happen at some point. The question becoming, will it come before the trade deadline, or will this come once this all gets settled in the off season? Now, since that report came out, then you get all the tea leaves and all the breadcrumbs from all different kinds of folks who are coming in, giving their takes and giving their thoughts. And I think one of the more significant ones came from Ian Bagley, who said the New York Knicks are indeed now aggressively pursuing Giannis Antetokoumpo. He also said the Miami Heat are aggressively pursuing Giannis Antetokoumpo. And in many ways, this is kind of setting up, as it typically ends up coming down to at some point when it comes to the New York Knicks, a battle between the Knicks and Pat Riley's Miami Heat. to be honest, it's really poetic that this is potentially what it's coming down to. Though we've also seen reports today that the Warriors are also expected to make an aggressive push. I have mentioned the Warriors a ton on this show because we had some of the stuff that was going on. Of course, they had the injury to Jimmy Butler, and I said they have all their draft capital in theory. They don't have really, besides Kuminga, who is extremely disgruntled. They don't have really many young players I think anyone is super salivating over. And obviously a lot of their stars are older, but they do have an expiring contract in Jimmy, and they do have every one of their first-round picks. So, and for a team that looks like they have a very small window, that could be enticing. So it seems like right now you're looking at Miami versus New York with a little bit of Giannis and the Warrior interest being drummed up here as well. So this is absolutely gonna be a wild week or so. My hunch right now is this stuff isn't getting brought up unless there isn't a real motivation by either the Bucks or by Giannis to finally get this thing over with and get him out of Milwaukee. Now, will either side be successful? Depends. If the push is purely on Giannis' side, and that is why this is being drummed up, then I think that there's still a great likelihood this trade doesn't happen now. Because we one of the things that's important about this is when you talk about the two top teams in the situation, when it comes to the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks, the teams that are seen as his preferred destinations, those teams will have more to offer the Milwaukee Bucks in the trade in the offseason as opposed to now. The Knicks get 2 first-round picks that get opened up that they could potentially move. The Heat also get 2 additional first-round picks that get opened up. So they would then have 4 first-round picks in total that they would be able to trade. So if you can get to the offseason if you're the Milwaukee Bucks and you want to send them to a place that he wants to go to, that would likely be the best case scenario for the Milwaukee Bucks. But then there's the human element. There's Giannis Antetokoumpo. There's the idea that he, of course, has been a great Milwaukee Buck. He's, I said, the greatest player in their franchise history. And he is extremely disgruntled. And he obviously wants an opportunity to win a championship this year. He's been battling injuries. He's been battling his calf injury that I keep saying is scaring me to death. But nonetheless, I don't think that he is looking at the season as one that he wants to just kind of chill, stay on ice, and wait for the offseason for his future to be decided. I think he wants to be an impact on the championship picture this year. So that's what's going to happen with this. Is will the Milwaukee Bucks acquiesce to Giannis and his I think his preference to get a deal done now so that they can, he can move on. He can be a part of a Knicks or Miami Heat playoff / title run. That I think was going to be the big question that is remained to be seen. We've seen a lot of stuff coming out. Reports that he has apparently spoken with Bam Adebayo, the star for the Miami Heat. All-star player, great player, Olympic gold medalist, but nonetheless, not superstar. But he's talked to the star of the Miami Heat, Bam Adebayo, about potentially playing with each other. This is something that they've expressed interest in mutually. There's been a bunch of other Nick tea leaves, and again, Ian Bagley from SNY, who I hope, I've actually spoken to Ian. I'm hoping that maybe not at this point in time, but because it's an extremely busy time for him, but at some point maybe towards the latter end of 40 days, 40 nights, we actually get him on to talk Knicks stuff. But I mean, he said that the Knicks are looking at Drew Holiday from the Portland Trailblazers, as someone that they have an understanding that is someone Giannis wants to play with. And we've heard the reporting about the Knicks being very interested in bringing in Drew Holiday to put this thing together. Again, my instinct, my hunch is that somebody wants to get this done really badly. If it is the Milwaukee Bucks, then I think he's going to get traded. But I don't think it necessarily means it's going to be to the Heat or the Knicks. I think that the Bucks, they want to just wipe their hands with this thing and say which one gets over with. I think the Warriors are a kind of dangerous team to look at. I think that there may be some other team waiting in the wings that we're not expecting that we may end up seeing him go to. What I've been saying, and it's what I firmly believe, is this. We're going to learn in the next few days how badly Giannis Antetokoumpo wants to be a New York Knick. If he really badly wants to be a New York Knick, and he kicks and he screams and he lets the Bucks and every other team that's a part of this sweepstakes know, because now that phone that's already been ringing for his agent off the hook that we saw from the report from Henry Abbott, that call, I'm sure he wants to probably throw his phone out the window in terms of the amount of calls he's getting now that Giannis is officially on the market. He's got to make it clear if he wants to be a Knick, I don't want to go to those other places, because the reality is if the Knicks are going to make a trade, whether it's this offseason when they get those 2 first-round picks or especially before the trade deadline, they simply do not have the draft capital that the Bucks are asking for. Shams Charania said the Bucks want a blue chip prospect and multiple first-round picks. As my friend Tommy Beer posted, and I was laughing. That's why I sent a bunch of laughing emojis when he posted. That is not something the Knicks have currently. They don't have a blue chip young prospect. They have good young players. Deuce McBride is on one of the best contracts in the NBA, and he's been one of the best 6 men in the NBA this year, and he's really coming to his own. But they don't have those assets. So it's going to be interesting to see, again, if Giannis really does want to be a Knick, what's going to have to happen is he's going to have to go to his representation. He's going to have to go to the Milwaukee Bucks. He's going to have to say, listen, I don't care about Miami. I don't care about going to play in San Francisco. None of those other teams entice me. Tell those teams I do not want to play for them. And my hope and my dream is to play for the New York Knicks and the New York Knicks only. That is what he has to do. It makes sense. We heard those reports from Henry Abbott that Rich Paul has been trying to finagle his way in here because Rich Paul has had success in the past getting guys to their preferred destinations. And I think that is the trouble that Giannis is having, is I think he wants to make himself a Knick, and he can't make it happen because the Bucks are looking at the Knicks' assets and saying, we don't want any of this crap. But for the Knicks, if any deal is going to happen, I would fully expect you're going to see them have to do something creative. Multiple teams. We've heard about the Blazers, obviously, the Drew Holiday connection. We've heard about the Pelicans now, and there's been these weird talks about Gerban Yabusele, and I'm like, why do I keep seeing these headlines about it? I don't care about Yabusele. He barely plays. He's been one of the worst signings probably Leon Rose has had as New York Knicks president. Whether he's traded or not, but now you start to see the breadcrumbs I mentioned yesterday. You see these breadcrumbs come together, and if the Knicks are able to make certain maneuvers happen where they could get some first-round picks for some of these guys on their roster to send to Milwaukee, then that's where you could see something happen. I don't want to waste any more time because I got my guy who I'm so excited to talk to today. Haven't rapped with him in a minute when it comes to obviously talking Knicks or talking sports. I've texted him a little bit. He's coming to my wedding. I'm really excited about that over the summer. But this is a awesome reunion to have here. My guy, Tommy Beer, joining me here on 40 Days, 40 Nights. Tommy, what's up, man?
I'm doing well now that I'm talking to you, my friend. How's everything?
Everything's great. I'm so excited to have you on, man. And when all this stuff started popping off, I was like, I got to get Tommy on. Because now it really feels like this is becoming a real situation. We heard all he kind of wants to get traded, but he's not saying it, and the Bucks aren't talking. It was all this kind of weird, bizarre smoke. It seems like we're now going in a much more different direction that is a lot more aggressive from not just obviously the Bucks and the Giannis' standpoint, but also these other teams that are now feeling like, okay, this is D-Day, this is the opportunity, this is where we have our chance maybe to get him. What has just been your overall outlook on how this is shaken out with Giannis, with the news today that he is now indeed on the trade market?
Yeah, I agree with you that it seems like things are trending. Obviously, with the latest Shams tweet and some other stuff, it definitely seems like things are trending in a very real direction, a very significant, some significant steps being taken forward. Then again, it seemed like we were taking that step in the summer when we had the first time he quote unquote demanded a trade, but didn't demand a trade, and then he demanded a trade again, but it wasn't really demand, and then he came out and said, I'm not going anywhere, and then I'll never ask for a trade, and then he asked for a trade, didn't ask for a trade, kind of hinted he wouldn't mind to be traded, and now the wording is he's comfortable being moved elsewhere. So who knows? The chances we could get a Giannis quote this weekend saying, I'm here for the rest of my career, I'll never be there. And then 2 hours later, we could get a Shams tweet. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I agree with you. Listen, we'd be derelict in our duty covering sports in this town if we didn't suggest that there was it seems like a more realistic possibility of that trade going down today, as of this moment, than we did yesterday, and probably at any point in the past, just because for a number of reasons, but mostly because I think it's clear to both sides here that they're ready to that they should be separated. It's one of those things. We saw it with Dame and Portland. It doesn't always happen quickly. Sometimes it has to get dragged out. I kind of in my newsletter today kind of compared it to a situation where a couple really loves each other and they care a great deal about each other, but they both realized it's probably best for both of us if we kind of go in our separate directions. But neither party wants to actually get on the phone with lawyers and start those divorce proceedings because that's a big step,
Right.
and then they get blamed for it. And then, we'll get into then there's years of therapy, that they'll have to uncover. I do think both sides have known for a while now, probably for the last year or so, that it's best. Listen, we've seen the blueprint is there for the Bucks. The Thunder are but the latest example of a team that traded a superstar at the right time, and that's the way you can build a franchise. If the Bucks are content to be the 7th, 8th, 9th seed in the East for the next few years, yeah, they can hold on to Giannis and hope he stays healthy. But if they really want to kickstart and do what's best for the franchise, best is even that's a pejorative term because listen, they owe it to Giannis. If he wants to stay there, he got him a championship. He's done so billions of dollars in revenue he's generated for the city, the state. So there's a lot of pieces there. But I think you would agree it's probably best for both parties to amicably split within the next 7 days.
My guy Tommy Beer joining me. Obviously, my former co-host in Orange and Blue Bloods. He has he's also the founder and owner of KnicksTrade, the Substack. My guy's been just killing it in this game. He's a veteran in this game, one of the best NBA writers here, and that's why I wanted to have him here. And I wanted to ask you about when it comes to the realistic aspect of the Knicks being able to make a move. Because I think it's a no-brainer that if the Knicks can acquire Giannis Antetokoumpo, I think almost, unless you're giving up Jalen Brunson, I think almost every Knicks fan or every observer would say you have to find a way to make that happen. But given what they did with the Mikal Bridges trade, and I see you may be already questioning that, but that's why I'm interested. But given what happened with the Mikal Bridges trade and them giving up all those first-round picks, and when you see a superstar move, like you mentioned with the Thunder trading Paul George, they got a zillion draft picks in return. We've seen other trades where a zillion draft picks have gone out. Is it realistic that the Knicks can actually acquire Giannis Antetokoumpo with the team that they have? They have good players, but they do not have draft picks, and they do not have particularly young, up-and-coming superstars, it appears, on their team. So what is the pathway for the Knicks to potentially make a trade, and is it even a possibility, you feel?
Yes, it's a possibility. We'll circle back to is it a no-brainer? I don't believe it is, but we'll get back there in a second. First, in terms of the logistics of it. The long answer is yes. There's a way to make it happen. They could trade OG and recoup some draft picks. They could trade Bridges to Portland, potentially another team, recoup some draft picks. They could use all those draft picks and go and then package it with Cat, and then maybe flip Cat to another team. So in other words, if they really were desperate to do it, does that make them a worse team with zero depth and trading for a 31-year-old injury-prone superstar that's relying on athleticism? Yes. Is that a good decision? Probably not. Is there so that's one path. I think it's very unlikely. Leon Rose has proven in years past. I think James Dolan gets on the horn and calls a buddy, and they figure out how to to get it done. Is there a realistic path for the Knicks to keep some semblance of a balanced roster and also give the Bucks what they want? Probably not. That's the other end of the spectrum. Unless Giannis puts his thumb on the scale and says, listen, as you were talking about before I hopped on, either it's New York or nowhere. Listen, I got you guys a championship. I want to have a good relationship with the franchise for the next 50 years. I want to come back for every alumni night, et cetera, yada, yada. Do me this favor. We'll make sure the Knicks get you the best possible package they can give you. They'll send you Cat, and then they'll also flip one of the two wings. Whether it's Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby, I think most Knicks fans and I think Leon Rose prefer to hold on to OG. So a deal that would look something like a 3-team deal that sends Mikal Bridges to Portland. The Knicks take back Jeremy Grant's cumbersome contract. He's got 2 years after this year left of near max money. Terrible contract. Good player, useful player, I should say. No longer, obviously, he's not going to live up to the hype of his contract. But Portland gets out from under that contract. So the Knicks then the Knicks asked the Blazers to flip some of their because as a reminder, they're in control of the Bucks drafts from 28 to 30. Do they send 2 of those 3 picks back? Control whether it's swap or outright trades, and then the Knicks also include some sweeteners, some second round picks. Tyler Kolek of Milwaukee, obviously he started Marquette. Maybe that would have some value for the Bucks franchise. Kevin Porter Jr. hurt. Do they want to take a flyer on Dadier? You got Yabusele's contract to kind of make the salaries work if the Knicks also want to take back Giannis. So Giannis plays with his brother. So I think the most realistic pathway that I've seen is kind of that deal. Does Portland want Bridges enough to give up those potentially very valuable Bucks picks? I don't know. Does getting off the Grant contract appeal to them? Do the Knicks demand that they get Drew Holiday instead of Jeremy Grant? Possibility. So there are all those things that the long story, the kind of long answer to your question is there is a pathway that the Knicks themselves can make happen. They probably don't want to do that. There's probably not a pathway where it's just a one-on-one swap, Cat and whoever. Why would the Bucks do that? And as we've all noted, the Knicks can't make a trade. They cannot trade an unprotected first-round pick until the summer. So I think that's kind of where we would head in that direction for it to be at least a reasonable possibility.
Yeah, and I want to touch back on what I mentioned earlier and what you wanted to circle back to because. Again, I think the momentum for a lot of Knicks fans at this point is if we can get Giannis, you got to get Giannis. But you're saying not so fast on that. And why do you have that pause about making a trade for Giannis? Because I have made my cases for that. It's same thing here on 40 Days and 40 Nights. I've done it on WFAN. The calf thing scares me. The potential that, again, you could be losing a lot of your depth scares me, but not so much the depth as much as it's who goes out. I feel like I don't know if I see a version of the Knicks that win a title with Jalen Brunson and Giannis if OG isn't here. And now I'm starting to wonder if Mitch isn't here. So that's kind of how I see it, but what is your trepidation about it, the Knicks potentially making a move for Giannis?
I love Giannis. Have always loved Giannis. Had my kids watch the Disney movie. It's an incredible story, incredible human being. I think his reputation took a bit of a knock here with the back and forth and the trade demand, the no trade demand. But again, I get it. There's feelings, there's emotions. He's a human being. He loves deeply. There's a special connection between this franchise and him. All that said. And again, as the player, I love the way Giannis competes. There's no higher compliment that you can give somebody than he's an MVP player that plays like he's on a 10-day contract. He gives it all. He's not the most, obviously not a great jump shooter, but has dedicated himself to that craft. So there's just from that human perspective and in terms of a guy to root for, I don't know if there's another athlete in professional sports, let alone the NBA, that is easier to root for than Giannis Antetokoumpo when you consider all he's done, selling sunglasses on the streets of Greece at 16 years old to pay for sneakers, so that he and his brothers could share. And then we get to he's a phenomenal player. He's a top 5 player in the NBA today. Full stop, pause. He's a top 20, 25 player, in the NBA, period. All time we're talking. So this is a guy that scored 50 points, grabbed 19 rebounds, was 17 and 19 from the free throw line in a game 6 of a closeout game in the NBA Finals. His resume is incredible. All that said, he's a 31-year-old big man who's been reliant on his athleticism for his entire career. Dealt with a calf injury last year. Dealt with a groin injury this year. Dealt with 2 calf injuries, which he's currently sidelined by now. He said he'd be out 4 to 6 weeks. The Bucks haven't confirmed it yet. There's no confirmation from anybody. Is it a strain? Is it a grade 2 tear? We have no idea what's going on. Would the Knicks do their due diligence? You would assume so. But again, I'm on the fence to give up a tremendous, all the draft capital you have and kind of break up this core that I still think, I understand, you're not as optimistic as you once were 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
6 weeks ago, certainly. But this is a watered-down Eastern Conference, and there's a decent chance that the Knicks can earn their trip to the NBA Finals. And as we know, anything can happen in the NBA Finals. So all that said, do you blow up this roster in order to get a guy that's 31? And keep in mind the reason that Giannis would prefer to get traded within the next days as opposed to next summer is because you need to have a player on your roster for 6 months before you can sign him to a max contract this summer. So are you committing to a 4-year max? In other words, you're trading for him, and not just, it's not a short-term thing. You got him for the next, until, 2031. Is his Achilles going to, we know about the unfortunate correlation between calf injuries and Achilles injuries. Even if he stays healthy, let's say he plays 70 games a year, there's going to be a diminishing athleticism, due to father time. This is a guy who's relied on that athleticism his entire career. If he can't jump over smaller players and drive around bigger players, he's going to have to knock down threes. He's a career sub 30% 3-point shooter. He's going to have to knock down mid-range jump shots and, score points at the free throw line. We've seen players do that in the past. Obviously the Patrick Ewings and other players have kind of redefined their games. I don't know if Giannis is capable of that. I'll know he'll try. But for all those reasons, if I'm on the fence, that the injury issue really scares me, because if you kind of trade the farm for Giannis, then you give up all your draft capital, your unprotected pick swaps, etc. And now you have a hole in the middle. And plus the fact, if you trade Cat, you're going to have to play him at center, which Giannis doesn't want to do, and you don't want to do because that's extra wear and tear on his body. And if you trade Cat, then you're relying on him at center, a little bit out of place. And you also, Mitchell Robinson's your only backup. Again, another question mark, even though he's been great. And the last thing is the Bucks have surrounded him with the kind of ideal team, a team surrounded by shooters. They had Brook Lopez playing alongside him for years. They made that really drastic decision to eat all that Dame money to get Miles Turner, the perfect stretch five who will defend the rim and also knock down 3-pointers. And the Bucks are 10 games under 500. And the Bucks have won 5 playoff games the last 3 years. They've been out of the first round once in the last 4 years since the championship run. Those are not overly encouraging things. So it's not like you get this player and that guarantees you a championship. History tells us you need a top 5 player in the NBA to win a championship. So on paper, it seems like a no-brainer. You got to do what you got to do. I would offer a word of caution in that respect.
My guy Tommy Bear joining me for just a few more minutes. One thing I want to ask you before I get you out of here is this: if it's not going to be the Knicks, who do you see as the biggest threat to potentially make a move for Giannis, whether it be this offseason or in a couple of days before the trade deadline?
I think that the Heat would make a lot of sense in a lot of respects. It's obviously, Riles is not afraid to push his chips to the middle of the table. They can put Hero and Kel'el Ware and some draft capital into the mix. But again, does that, it's that weird situation. We live in a world now where Trae Young gets salary dumped. That wouldn't have happened. The Knicks wouldn't have had to trade 5 draft picks probably for Mikal Bridges in the modern day world. It's the ever evolving as teams learn about the ramifications of the salary cap and the second apron. This new collective bargaining agreement really complicates things in a lot of respects. So if the Knicks don't pony up, I could see the Warriors, kind of pushing all their chips to the middle of the table as well. They have some young, obviously they'd love to get rid of Kuminga. They own all their draft picks going forward. You would think that would be very intriguing to Milwaukee. Steph's 38, still playing at an incredibly high level. Giannis is a great teammate, but again, I wouldn't mind betting on those guys. Falling off the cliff in the next year or two, let alone you can get a 2029 unprotected pick, a 2031 unprotected pick. How do the Warriors respond? With Miami, the issue for Milwaukee, I think, would be how valuable are those Heat picks? This is a franchise that has, really never fallen upon hard times for an extended period. A lot of that has to do with Riley credit where it's due to Pat the Rat. But also they play in 90-degree weather. They're on the beach. There's no state income tax. They have a lot of built-in advantages. The Warriors, on the other hand, how successful have they been without the Bob Myers, Steph Curry, combination? Bob Myers already had down. Steph Curry still playing at a very high level, but how much longer? So we'll see how that plays out. But there's certainly I think if the Knicks don't, if Giannis doesn't demand to be traded to the Knicks within the next week, my gut tells me Milwaukee decides to sit pat, tank this season. Have Giannis sit out for the remainder of the season, assuming they by the time he's even cleared to come back, they'll be 15, maybe 20 games under 500. Get a lottery pick, maybe get lucky, a la the Dallas Mavericks.
Yep.
We know how talented this draft pick is. Maybe get a top 3 pick and luck into one of the really talented players. And there are 4 or 5 really guys that maybe you get the 3rd pick and you get Boozer from Duke and you say Giannis, okay, we got Turner and we got all these other pieces and Ryan Rollins is playing at a really high level. You come back healthy, maybe we can make a run at this thing, or at least that's a convincing of argument that other teams feel like, okay, we can't lowball them, even though Giannis is on extremely risky because Giannis is on expiring contract. So my sense is if it's certainly a possibility. Anything can happen. Luka Doncic got traded this time last year. So it certainly wouldn't shock me if somebody, an unsurprising team comes out of the mix and makes a push for him. But it also wouldn't surprise me if the Bucks sit back and say, listen, do we want it? We have this incredible, valuable asset that's going to determine the next 7 years of our franchise. So let's give ourselves, take a deep breath, wait until the summer where every team has sees the lay of the land. They understand how many what I can offer. Here's all the draft capital. The Knicks, as we mentioned, would be able to trade not only their 2032 pick, which they don't have access to now because of the stipend rule. That's an unprotected pick that you would think would be very valuable to have a draft pick 7 years away in a James Dolan run franchise. Who knows if Leon Rose sticks around? We know the ages of Brunson and Hart and OG, obviously. So the Knicks would be able to offer more in terms of draft capital. The Knicks could also, pick for the Bucks in the 2026 draft. They can't trade the pick, but they could say, hey, we'll give you you make the selection and we'll agree to the trade prior to the draft, and you tell us who to draft at the 25th overall pick, whatever the Knicks end up being. So there's that. So I think at the end of the day, I certainly wouldn't be shocked if the Bucks sit down and say, okay, let's wait this summer and decide this thing.
Yeah, that's going to be the key. I think this is going to come down to me, like, will the Bucks decide, listen, Giannis wants to make a go at it this year, the Knicks or the Heat or whoever, they're primed to make a run potentially this year in a weaker Eastern Conference. Like, there's a reason for him to want to go out there, rest up the calf for the month or however long it takes for him to get healthy and get out there. But that will be them doing him a solid because it's just very clear that they can get more from not just the Knicks and the Heat, but then anybody else also in the offseason. Everyone else also gets more assets, more things available to them, more salary cap relief as we get past the June 30th start the free agency. So everything opens up. So this is going to be, we're going to learn a lot about also the relationship that the Bucks have with Giannis.
One other quick note from a Knicks perspective. A couple of reasons they would want to do the trade now prior to the deadline. It would be beneficial from a perspective of if they were to trade for Giannis in the summer, they would have to send out multiple salaries, which would effectively hard cap them at that second apron again. That's something they want to avoid. It would also make re-signing Mitchell Robinson more difficult for the same salary cap purposes. Whereas if the Knicks traded for Giannis prior to the deadline, they would obviously have Giannis in-house. They could exceed the cap, so re-signing Mitchell Robinson would be easier. I've seen, and one other thing, I've seen mentioned that a reason why teams would want to trade for Giannis prior to the deadline was, again, as we briefly mentioned earlier, doing so allows the team that acquires him to re-sign him to that 4-year max contract. What if I'm a GM of a team and I say, I want Giannis, but I don't want the pressure of being forced to sign him to that max contract? In other words, it might be beneficial to not have the ability, unfortunately, however you want to phrase it, to sign him to that max contract.
Oh no, I can't sign you to $65 million a year. Oh well,
Sorry,
sorry.
Giannis. I would love to do it, but the CBA is me hamstrung. What do you want me to do? EJ, do you the deal is on the table. Cat, Bridges, Kolek, Dadier, and most of your pick swaps and second round picks, etc. You get Giannis back. Do you do it?
Today I do it.
Yeah.
If you asked me 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I actually was literally on WFAN being like, I didn't want Giannis here. Because my whole aspect, and this is from a weird fan aspect, was I applied this also not just to Giannis, but also LeBron James. When Rich Paul started kind of he's had this weird podcast with Max Kellerman where they seem to play NBA GM, which I'm like, you represent players. There seems to be a conflict of interest, but whatever. He started making comments about, oh, should he come to Knicks? I want the Knicks to win their championship on their own. And this idea that they built the team, they drafted well enough, they traded certain pieces, they looked at guys that were unheralded or people didn't think would win a title, and they put together a unit with a bunch of guys who don't necessarily have a championship team or players or experience, and they go out there and win on their own. If you get Giannis, and this is what's been said when it comes to some of the reporting about why he's interested in New York, is he is very much invested in this idea of the challenge of winning a championship in New York. I greatly appreciate the support and the wanting the challenge. We have so many guys that have not wanted that challenge. But at this point in time, what I think will happen is if Giannis comes and he becomes a Knick and they win a title, it's going to be about Giannis. It's not going to be so much about the Knicks. And definitely that was the case if that was someone like LeBron James. However, watching this team, now they've kind of steadied and they're playing a lot better of late, but watching the team during that swoon where they looked like they couldn't buy a win.
Yeah.
The team that I was so bullish on that I was saying I thought actually had a chance to win a championship, I started to have real concerns about because I just don't know if they guard well enough. Their defense is so hit or miss. They were great last night, but they had a long stretch where they were essentially the worst defensive team in the NBA. And to me, I'm just looking at the bodies and Cat and Brunson and knowing that you're just gonna have to play those guys for extended periods of time to win. It's just the best version of the Knicks is still always going to have to be Brunson and Cat out there because those are their most dynamic offensive players. If one of those guys is out and you're bringing in someone who's a better defender, but your offense suffers, and the Knicks have the best offense in the NBA, arguably. So my thing was, you know what? I don't think with this dynamic you can win a championship because at the end of the day, you're going to have to face Detroit. You're going to have to face Philadelphia. These teams are going to attack the paint. They're gonna attack your perimeter guys. They're gonna try to expose Cat and expose Brunson in the way that Indiana did. And if you get through those teams, then you know what the OKC Thunder are gonna do. I felt like take that equation out, put Giannis in there, and let me just figure out how I reconfigure this thing because I don't know with Cat and beyond just that dynamic in terms of just the basketball, the way his mind is and the way he's been playing of late. And the mopiness and the not being ready to play, it feels like at times, and the silly fouls and the silly decision making. I mentioned a couple weeks ago, at times he has reminded me of the worst of the Julius Randle experience in this past month. And Julius Randle wasn't all bad. There were great moments with Julius Randle. He had amazing games. He had 40-point games. He carried the Knicks, brought the Knicks out of poverty. But the worst of those moments, we know how that roller coaster was. When he's flipping laptops, when he's driving the triple teams. That's the stuff I'm seeing from Cat, basically. He's not as ornery, but right. all the other stuff is the same. Driving the triple teams, not playing defense, not hustling back. I didn't think you could win with that guy, with Julius Randle. Me and you talked about it a bunch. I said it can't be Tibbs and Randle anymore. One of these guys has got to go. Now, eventually, both of them are gone. I'm notching Cat now. I'm feeling the same way. I don't know if you could win with that guy playing like that. So that was my thing, was if I can move Cat, I have a different landscape in this, I would try something else. That's where I'm at.
I agree with you. Very strong points, very salient points, certainly defendable. I'm not as down on Cat as most. I understand that he's struggling right now. I think if he had just if a few of his 3-pointers go down, if he, if we see a little bit of a progression to the mean, a negative regression, like this, he's going to play to the back of his basketball card at some point. He's not a 33% 3-point shooter. He's not a 47% field goal shooter. So I wonder if all this trade drama has really affected him, in a significant way. These are human beings after all. And I wonder if we kind of see a big bounce back from him after the deadline, if he's still here. Because the one other thing is I still give him credit for he's aggressive on the boards. He's never
one rebounder in the NBA. Yeah.
That there's something to be said for that. That's an important part of kind of what the Knicks do. And he still does it on a nightly basis. He's not afraid to mix it up down low. He's not afraid to continue driving. You wish he'd stop with the hooking, obviously, and maybe someday he'll do it. But so we'll see. But yeah, I understand.
Well, so let's say the Knicks stand pat and Giannis is not a Knick. What are their chances in the East still? Do you still feel like this is a team that can get to the finals? Like, where are you at with this roster?
Yeah, I think so. Listen, I mentioned that I think it was just yesterday or a couple days ago that the Pistons finally jumped the Knicks in terms of the Vegas odds to win the Eastern Conference. And I mentioned Vegas, those particular odds often, like in in the newsletters and stuff, because the one thing Vegas does, it doesn't care about how we feel or, Cat's annoying and, he complains to the ref and he makes silly faces and all this other stuff. And Mikal Bridges, they gave up too many. The two is overpaid for him. Vegas, filters all that nonsense out and just talks about what is it if these two teams play each other over a 7-game series and one team has Jalen Brunson and Deuce McBride and OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns and a healthy Mitchell Robinson, who knows, and Landry Shamet and some other pieces come off the bench. Maybe they if they don't make a Giannis move, maybe they bring in a Jose Alvarado type player.
Yeah, Najee Marshall has been someone that's been mentioned. I actually kind of like him.
I love Najee Marshall. I think he's probably a little bit out of their price range.
Right.
Again, because we got to assume that if Giannis isn't traded, the Knicks want to keep their draft capital, maybe for a move this summer. But all that said, so yeah, I think. Listen, are they the odds-on favorite? No, I think you can make Detroit, but outside of the Pistons, first of all, I think the Knicks could beat the Pistons in a 7-game series. We know they have the best player on the floor, regardless of what other talking heads want to tell you. As Nick's Twitter likes to say, everyone's better than Jalen Brunson until it's time to be better than Jalen Brunson.
Oh, I've said it on the show.
There you go. So that's an immense factor. And for all the stuff that Cat, for all the criticism he's received, and rightfully so, he's been bad for a month now. Some funky going on. In the Eastern Conference Finals, 8 months ago, whatever it was, dude averaged 24-12, shooting 50% from three, made 3-pointers game. Had some huge moments in that Pistons series, some huge games, some huge quarters in that Celtics series. So this is kind of still the same nucleus that upset the world. So they beat the Pistons last year. They beat the Pistons last year. They beat the Celtics last year. Could they not beat this version of the Celtics this year without Tatum for the first 3 games? So again, we'll see how it all plays out. But the NBA season is a roller coaster. The teams will play poorly. I think after the Knicks won the Cup, they started reading the press clippings and the banners and all that other stuff. And I think, human emotion kind of played a part in it. And Mike Brown, and knowing that Mike Brown would rest them if they needed to, without having that, Tibbs constantly holding their feet to the fire. So it was just kind of a relaxation that set in a little bit longer than you would like, certainly. The Mavericks blowout was certainly a cause for concern and the game in Sacramento. But again, they bounced back. Listen, you are what your record says you are, for better or for worse. The Knicks are 10 games over 500. They've won 3 games in a row. Weirdly, they've been one of the best defensive teams in the NBA over the last 2 weeks. We'll see how long that holds up. We know that they can score when they start making their shots, that they can be one, if not the most, impressive offense in the league, one of them. So yeah, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. I'd probably pick them. I certainly would pick them to beat every team other than the Pistons in a 7-game series if that series started next week. I certainly think the Pistons would give them a run for their money. No disrespect to Detroit because they played really, really well. I love the way they're complementary pieces. Cade is emerging as a superstar. Has that first round experience where the Knicks kind of put the clamps on him a bit, forced them into turnovers and poor free throw percentage. It's all the great players kind of need to go through a bad series usually before they can kind of find their footing. So, but all that said, listen, are they a championship team? That's a different story. Obviously, they'll be a huge underdog in the finals. But listen, the Pacers were a huge underdog going into the finals last year, and they were forced to Game 7. And if Tyrese Halliburton doesn't tear his Achilles in the first quarter, who knows what happens? So all you can do is put yourself in position to win a championship. And right now, currently speaking, and that's the other thing. If the Knicks were, they needed a miracle to make the finals. Then I say, okay, go all in on Giannis and like you said, figure out the rest. And I'm still not opposed to it just because I'm such a fan of Giannis the player. But, man, those calf injuries scare the daylights out of me.
That's the thing. That's the thing that's really making me worried. Yeah.
Scary, bro.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is with this. I know we've had Achilles injuries a bunch throughout the history of sports, obviously. But it just feels like this recent rash where they've been coming in bunches, and they all seem to progress the same way, where someone dealing with a calf injury. Like, I didn't even know about Jason Tatum dealing with calf soreness until, who was it? Did you go with Arenas or somebody? Somebody reached out to him and was like, hey, were you dealing with calf soreness before he tore his Achilles? He said, yes, I was. Damian Lillard dealing with calf soreness, and obviously we saw what happened with Tyrese Halliburton. So that's the part of this that makes me nervous. But I also look at this opportunity and I'm like, man, again, with how they were defending during that stretch where it seemed like teams figured them out, and they essentially said, we're going to just spam actions where we're putting Cat and Brunson, and you guys got to figure out how to adjust. And the Knicks, now they've made better adjustments since. I also think Brunson's done a much better job of taking his responsibility much more seriously. I think his defense has been better the last few games too. That's been a big jump. But that was going to be the strategy, and when you saw Indiana take them apart last year doing that, and that was with Tibbs, who I respect as a defensive coach. Mike Brown, we know, is kind of running a different defensive philosophy. That started off okay, but again, looked wobbly at the start of the new year. What's that going to look like? If I just take Cat out of the equation and now have Giannis out there, now I'm only looking at protecting one bad defender as opposed to two.
And again, I don't even want to put it out there, but listen, if you're playing out all the scenarios, you have to address the reality. You trade for Giannis. Is he going to rush back? Yeah. He's going to want to come back as soon as possible to get put on a Knicks uniform and have that mellow moment where I'm coming home, and the garden explodes. So he's going to come back as soon as possible, as opposed to giving himself. And the Knicks training staff, to their credit, continue to err on the side of caution, like it or not. So they would press back against it. But listen, you're making a trade for the guy. You obviously want to get some minutes with the lineup. You want to ramp him up as soon as possible so he's comfortable going into the postseason. If you're going to play out, you got to play out the worst case scenario that he tears his Achilles in early April, late March, whatever the case might be. Then you're looking at a team with no Cat, no Mikal Bridges or OG, one of the wings. Yep. No Giannis, and not only for that playoffs, but for the next season as well. You're in salary cap hell. You don't have any draft. You have no draft capital to kind of restack the deck. Jalen Brunson's getting older. Mikal Bridges, gets destroyed even more, frequently for those draft picks that he's owed. And, there is a nightmare scenario out there. If you go all in on Giannis, listen, Leon Rose is a smart man. And we've talked about, and we talked about on our show, sometimes the best trades you make are the one, the best trades are the ones you don't make.
Absolutely.
The Knicks not going all in on Donovan Mitchell. And the Knicks not going all in on DeJounte Murray, another Achilles injury issue.
Yeah.
And kind of making the right case scenario. They were, going up to that line And I to this day, and we both agree that Danny Ainge assumed, listen, I'm just going to keep on pushing all the asking for all this extra stuff until
somebody
James
gives
Dolan.
up.
It's
Yeah.
nobody's, and I assume the Knicks are going to do it because they're desperate for it. And
Yeah.
Leon Rose, said whatever it was, what that deal breaker was, whether it was Quentin Grimes or IQ or whatever that situation, how it played itself out. Leon Rose has shown great restraint when it comes to that. So I have faith that he'll do so again if the right deal presents itself, and if you're not mortgaging the future completely, there's certainly a scenario in which it makes sense to add Giannis Antetokoumpo, one of the best players in the NBA today, and one of the greatest players of all time, to this roster. There's also a scenario where Leon Rose decides that it's just too much of investment.
My guy Tommy Beer, man, this has been phenomenal. Great rapping with you again. It's been too long. We gotta make sure it's not as long next time, that we can get you back on, whether it's me here on 40 Days and 40 Nights on New Generation Media, or my doing shows on The Fan. We did, I thought, a phenomenal job on our Knicks podcast, Orange and Blue Bloods, and you were always just a gem to work with. And you the listeners, the people watching, they see this. I mean, we're at almost 500 views, which is a record so far in 40 Days and 40 Nights. So people are invested in what's happening with the Knicks, what's happening with Giannis, and they want to hear from Tommy. Please let the people know where they can find you.
At Tommy Beer on Twitter. And you guys, more importantly, support my guy, EJ, on his venture, 40 Days, 40 Nights, and wherever he may land next. I know whoever hires him is going to make a right decision.
Love it, man. Tommy, thanks so much. Great seeing you, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Anytime. Anytime you need me, I'm here for you, EJ.
You got it, man. Take care.
Peace.
That was awesome. Shout out to my guy, Tommy Beer. And I really appreciated having him on, just because he's my friend, and just because he's smart about basketball. And I actually think it was great to have him, because I think me and Tommy kind of are cut from the same cloth when it comes to what tends to be a more optimistic look and a less alarmist look at the New York Knicks and how you're judging them and how you're watching their movements throughout a season. But I haven't been around with Tommy for 2 years, right? And I've been going solo dolo, right? And doing this 40 Days and 40 Nights. And I've been doing, of course, obviously, Maggie and Perloff show, and Fan, doing all the fun stuff I've done in the last few years. But that January stretch, early January stretch with the Knicks, after what they looked like going into the new year, it made me pause and made me really wonder, and made me kind of have a come to Jesus type moment where I'm like, am I really going to keep fronting like this team that I'm watching getting boat raced by everybody that can't cover anyone? Is this a team that's going to be the team that finally wins the championship? It's funny, like, we had Maggie Gray on yesterday, formerly of WFAN, formerly of Infinity Sports Network, host of the Maggie and Perloff show. And she didn't say this yesterday, but I remember when, towards the last few months of our show, this was, I think, after the Texans loss. The Bills lost to the Texans at midway through the year. And obviously, Maggie's a diehard Bills fan. She's been waiting for this Bills championship to finally come at some point in time. And they lost to the Texans. And it was a sloppy performance. They got kind of just dominated from the start. It was not a good Bills game. And Maggie said that she was out in the Bills in terms of winning a Super Bowl this year. And he said one of the reasons why was also just a gut feel, that she said that when she's watching the Bills, like, she'll know when she sees it that that's the team that's going to win a championship. She's like, I know it's not this team. This team and all the issues they're having and how much they're struggling with the Texans and a team that they continue to struggle with, she just had a visceral feel that this isn't the team that's going to, essentially save my sports life. That's going to redeem all the pain I've dealt with my entire life. This is not the team. This is not the team, not with these issues, not with this coach. Like, not this. I don't know who it's going to be, but it ain't this team. I think that was kind of how I felt when I started to watch that Knicks team at the beginning of January, where I'm watching them just, again, the defensive effort was, not only was the effort abysmal, it also appeared as if the pieces no longer fit, or, again, teams that kind of figured them out. They just, again, like I told Tommy, they just started spamming actions where they were attacking Brunson and Cat in various different things, and the Knicks couldn't hide them. And I think it was Ben Ritholtz, so I hope to have on too, Ritholtz, who's amazing, another super smart basketball guy. And he said that, listen, like, you guys wanted Tibbs gone. I was one of them. But one of the things about Tibbs' defense is that a lot of it was about mitigating mistakes and about mitigating risk in many sense, mitigating your weaknesses. And sometimes that led to a lot of drop coverage, led to a lot of open threes, which drove Knicks fans insane and was maddening. But part of that was because of trying to hide, in many ways, Cat and Brunson. And he was like, you guys wanted a more aggressive approach. Mike Brown's giving a more aggressive approach, but now it looks like teams are figuring this out. And this is why Tibbs didn't play defense this way with this roster. So when I heard that, I was like, well, I damn sure don't want Tibbs back or how he was running this team. I was like, so I saw them fail last year, and now Mike Brown's doing something different, and he can't figure this thing out. Maybe it just doesn't work. So I have kind of started to trend more towards I would trade for Giannis, though. I'm that the calf thing really scares me. It's why I would, if it's possible, I don't know. If the Knicks could play three-dimensional chess, where they could find a way to be involved in these trade negotiations, drive up the price as much as they can, and just make it difficult on the Heat or the Warriors to actually pull a trade like this off, to the point where maybe those teams back out and say, we don't want to give up that much for Giannis Antetokoumpo. And the Knicks, if they could then say, hey, we'll take this to the offseason, I'd much rather prefer just deal with this in the offseason. I think get him, he'll sit out the rest of the year. I don't think he's going to come back if he's not traded. Let him sit out the rest of the year. Let him get his calf right. Let him come in with a full training camp. The Knicks can actually, fully try to maneuver the roster around him after they make this blockbuster kind of move. I'd rather see that happen than the run to get him right now and figure it out then. I'd rather just go with this team. Let's see what happens. I don't think they're going to win a championship, but who knows? And then do it in the offseason. But Tommy, I think, he mentioned that the Knicks have improved defensively over the last few weeks, which is true. I'll be watching them with New York Post Sports in about an hour, and I got to get out of here soon. So I'll be leaving in a minute. But this is one of the toughest conundrums I feel the Knicks have been in when it comes to going after a star. I felt like the Donovan Mitchell thing was a lot more clear-minded. I think all the other superstar pursuits that they won or didn't win, were much more clear-minded. This one's tricky. He is aging. He has shown to be injury-prone. There have been plenty of playoff series that he just hasn't finished in recent years. Forget about the regular season games he's missed or whatever. He didn't finish. I don't think he finished. He finished last year's series because we saw John Halliburton going crazy. But the year before, I think he went out early. The year before that, I think he also went out early. When they were the number 1 seed, they lost to the Heat. Like, he is just not finished postseasons in recent years. So the injury risk is real. I think the reason why it's not a deal breaker for me, whether it's this year or this trade deadline, but particularly in the offseason, is because I'm also wondering what's Cat's situation. He's a similar age. Andrea, my fiance, has now grown to call him the lumberjack or the lumberer, because she feels like every time she watches him, he's just kind of lumbering around and kind of clumsily banging into people. And even for someone who's not a basketball fan, who doesn't know anything about sports, who just watches the game and sees a 7-foot guy kind of lumbering his way through 4 or 5 bodies, crashing into the stanchion or crashing into the first row every couple plays, and she's like, that just doesn't look like how basketball's supposed to be played. Again, that's someone who's not even a NBA fan who's saying that. And I've wondered, not something I think I've said here or on Fan, some of this decline we have from Cat, I've wondered if it actually was a little bit of wear and tear from last season. He did kind of go out. He had a finger issue. He had a knee issue. And he played through it. And Tommy was eloquent in talking about how well he played through all those ailments. But now there's a full offseason. And now you're a year older. Now you're trying to rev it back up. And he's trying to get used to this offense. I also just feel like with the way he has been finishing around the basket, I mentioned a couple of days ago, he's in the 19th percentile at finishing around the rim. I mean, that's abysmal. For a guy who's 7 feet tall, as big and strong as he is, there's no reason for that. Unless he's banged up. Unless he's starting to feel the wear and tear of Father Time. Those are things that are real. Those are things that are possible. That I can see as being a reason why maybe he is also struggling, why he hasn't had to lift on his jump shot, and why his three-pointers have been off this year. Tommy made the case that, he should eventually play to the back of the basketball card, but all those things about Giannis and him being a guy who is potentially going to be approaching his decline soon, they all apply to Cat. That's why I'm open to this trade, because I'm like, Cat's going to be the biggest piece in any deal that goes out. And I think he's also dealing with a lot of the same thing Giannis is dealing with. So I have no problem trading him. The question becomes, what else am I attaching to Cat? I do not want to attach OG Anunoby. I do not want to attach Mitchell Robinson. But if I can attach Bridges and it means I bring Holiday in here, I think Holiday is actually a pretty good swap. It puts you in a real tight timeline. Holiday's 35 years old. But I think from a basketball standpoint, he works really well as a complement next to Brunson. Even though he's 6'3", the guy can guard guys 6'10", so I have no concern at all about his size in terms of being the starting shooting guard. So I think that, and he's also a very good shooter, just like Mikal Bridges. So I think in many ways I'm okay with that aspect of it if Holiday has to come back here. But this is going to get very fascinating. This is going to get very, very intense very fast because the deadline is approaching quickly. And there's definitely motivation to make this move happen. So we're about an hour in. I got to run. I know we had plenty of stuff to get to. And I want to shout out everybody on X, man, because we're at now 570 plus viewers total. Most of these on X. And great thanks to my guy, Tommy Beer. He definitely was responsible for a lot of that. He has a ton of followers on X. And he's talking Giannis. People want to hear. And because of that, people are now watching me still on X. And I really appreciate you guys and appreciate the support. But like, this thing is gonna be intense, and everybody's watching. But the Knicks have a game tonight. They're playing against the Toronto Raptors, and I will be with New York Post Sports, the New York Got Game Knicks watch party live stream on their YouTube channel. I'll be with my guy Dexter Henry and my guy Brian Fonseca. He's not my guy yet. Actually, not met Brian, but I've been, again, like I told you, I'm like a sports media nerd, so I admire people from a distance. I've admired Brian's work for a long time. By the way, I can't wait to talk to Brian about some boxing, because that's also one of the other infinity stones of EJ's interest that could make an appearance on this show. It hasn't quite yet. I did see Tyson Fury's coming out of retirement. Brian Fonseca is a great boxing commentator, and some of his commentary is actually what's gotten me back into boxing. So I'm actually excited. Maybe not necessarily while we're watching Knicks game, while you're watching Knicks and the Raptors. But at some point, commercial breaks, things like that, I would love to pick his brain about some boxing as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So I'll be on very soon. I got to literally leave here and get my ass over there to Midtown. And Knicks play at 7:30, so that should be a lot of fun. There's a ton of stuff I know we didn't get to. But the good news about this is I'm on every day. So I'll be on again tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. So I know we got to get to some interesting stuff with the Browns hiring Todd Monken, what that means for the Giants. The Jets have a new defensive coordinator. Reggie Miller made some weird comments about Derrick Rose. Eli Manning, some breaking news. He missed out on the Hall of Fame. We're going to hold all that for tomorrow morning. We'll get to all the fun details and the juicy details that come with that. LeBron's playing the Cavs tonight. There was a report today about LeBron and his openness to potentially play for the Cavaliers, or rather vice versa, the Cavs' openness in terms of bringing him back. So we got time. That's one thing I love about this, man. We got time, but I with Tommy and how good that conversation was going, and just how much people were loving the thing, I was like, I'm not cutting my guys short. We're gonna just ride this thing out. If this becomes a Giannis podcast, a Giannis live stream, so be it. It's massive news that we have that Giannis is now officially on the trade market, and I would anticipate for the duration of this live stream, definitely at least up until the trade deadline, but maybe even after, if he is on a new team, that he will become and remain a main character of 40 Days and 40 Nights. But that's going to do it, man. I'm going to end it here. I want to thank you guys so much for checking out this edition of 40 Days and 40 Nights. Again, you can catch all these episodes on New Generation Podcast Network for the audio version of the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. Again, we stream live every Monday through Friday, 8 a.m., 6 p.m. We're also, of course, live on X, EJ_Stewart, and on Instagram, @EJ. Big thanks to my guy, Tommy Veer. Make sure you go follow him and read his Substack. And I'll see you guys in a bit. Thanks, guys. Again, New York Post Sports. I'm going there now. See you soon, Dex. See you soon, Brian. And see you guys. Hope you guys follow me over there. Later, guys.